What time is it? Game time! What time is it? Game time! What time is it? Game time!
Welcome back, guys and girls, to the Game Time Ballers Podcast. It's your host, Jacob, and we got Josh behind the ones and twos. And we are coming to you today for an episode about a team that is near and dear to Josh's heart. And if you look at the just Game Time as a company, something near and dear to Game Time with them being based out of Chicago. And that is the 2016 Chicago Cubs World Series win. In terms of history, this is one that goes down in World Series history. We'll just highlight the fact that how long it had been since the Cubs won a World Series? 110 years?
Yeah, it was somewhere.
So,
yeah.
Again, if you're a Cubs fan, this is something that you probably talk about quite a bit. And what we're trying to do, again, is we want to spark those conversations of remember that one time. And if you're a Cubs fan, it's really remember that one time in the last 110 years. So if you're a Cubs fan, this episode, I want the views and likes to run up. I want the comments to run up. And I just feel like the engagement on this episode is going to be big. So this is a big episode for the city of Chicago and you Cubs fans out there. So what we're kind of going to do before we start everything off, the thing that I want to do, we're going to run with the same way that we've been doing it for the other teams. And we're going to start off with the name drop segment. So Josh, we'll start off with you. When I say 2016 Cubs, give me three guys that come to your head.
I'd say Rizzo, Baez, Zobrist.
Wow, went with a little zinger there at the end.
Because of what we were talking about before, you know.
And they had the three-headed monster, and honestly, that three-headed monster could be changed out with a few names. So
Bryant, you know, I mean, dude's a nasty third baseman.
Yeah, so you got Rizzo, Baez, Zobrist. I'll go with my name drops from that team. You took one of them, but I'm going to take it back. Chris Bryant, dog, won the MVP that season in the NL.
Oh, yeah.
Another name drop from that team, Jorge Soler. I bet you a lot of people didn't know that Jorge Soler was a rookie on that team. And then final name drop, even though he didn't do much during this season, when he did play, he was clutch, and that's Kyle Schwarber. Kyle Schwarber, I believe, it was his second season. He had been a rookie the year before, I think.
Yeah.
That's our name drop section. Again, when we do this for teams, I really feel like you can pull up any team and be like, dang, that guy was on that team. For me, the one that sticks out to me is I had no idea that Jorge Soler was on that team. And it's kind of just funny to see how people's careers play out. And when we get into kind of the setting the stage and some of the offseason moves that these guys made, you'll hear some of these names involved in these trades. And it's just kind of funny to see where guys landed and how their career shaped up. So with that being said, our next section or segment that we're going to get into on the Game Time Ballers podcast, the Setting the Stage segment is brought to you by the Game Time Bats company. So what we're going to do here with every episode that we do, we're going to really highlight the team that we're talking about and the souvenir bat that they make. And the cool thing about Game Time Bats is if you go down to the description here below, you can go on their website and you can go cop this 2016 Chicago Cubs World Series bat to throw in the trophy case. So while we're talking about it, while we got the juices flowing, use that juice and go take it to the website. And with that being said, we'll run the ad here for Game Time Bats. Appreciate their sponsorship. Thanks again, Game Time Bats. Again, make sure you hit that description in the down below and go on there and copy a 2016 Chicago Cubs World Series bat. Got to have that in the man cave, trophy case, all that stuff. Let's see here. So we're getting into the Setting the Stage segment. And again, we're just going to highlight what this segment is about. Every team with a World Series run, there's stuff that is done led up to that season. There's off-season moves that are made. There's stuff that happened the year before. There's things that go into it that set the stage for that run. So we're going to highlight that in this segment. So setting the stage, Joe Maddon, second year, leading the ball club as manager. His first season, they lost in the NLCS in 2015. So he came in first year, had a lot of success. And really what that team did and that front office did was the Cubs have been competitive years leading up to the 2016. They have been to the NLCS. They have had playoff teams, but they had really built this lineup towards the future. In 2015, you kind of saw a glimpse of it because they had people like Chris Bryant, who came up and made his major league debut as a rookie. You had Schwarber, who came up and made his debut as a rookie. So you draft 2 guys and develop them, make them really good. You go out and you trade for guys in the offseason or in 2015 leading up, and they kind of show you stuff. And then basically as you get into this offseason going into 2016, the Cubs ownership has got to be thinking we're right there. We're a couple of moves away from being that team. So I think they did really a good job of structuring how they were going to go out and get guys, because they went for young end talent, but then they also went for a lot of depth too, and a lot of experience in older guys. And you'll see with these roster constructions on a lot of these teams, depth always wins, and having leadership in the locker room of guys that have been there, done that always helps. So first offseason move they make, they go out and they sign Jason Hayward, a good everyday right fielder, left fielder, can play kind of all around the diamond in the outfield for him. Then they go out and they sign Ben Zobrist. Ben Zobrist was fresh off of winning a World Series with the Royals. He can play second base, utility guy, can be played everywhere. And so they go out and they get a veteran guy that has World Series experience in Ben Zobrist. Then if you look just kind of adding on the experience, they go out and they sign Dexter Fowler, who can be an everyday center fielder for him. They go out and they sign John Lackey, who's a veteran arm, to add to the rotation. They go out and they signed John Lester the year before that, adding depth to the rotation. And then look at the people they developed. They drafted Schwarber, develop him. They draft Bryant, they develop him. They have Javi Baez on the cusp of making his debut and a huge prospect in the system going into the season. You know that he's kind of waiting for his moment to shine. Then they go and they trade for young pieces like Aroldis Chapman from the Yankees. They go and they trade for Anthony Rizzo, leading that offseason from the Padres, and then he kind of does what he does. And so really they're setting this lineup up to have depth in pitching and in the field. And I think we're going to see that being a common theme with these World Series teams is the offseason moves make the team. And they really set the team up for that run to go through the waves of a 162 game season throughout the postseason, because you need depth. You need guys that can do everything. You need guys that can play everywhere, and you need veteran presence in the locker room too. And so again, with setting the stage, we got to talk about the history, and Chicago Cubs are one of the most storied franchises in the MLB, just with the history. So getting into the history for the Cubs, and I think Josh is a Cubs fan, you'll find this pretty cool. This was the 145th season of the Chicago Cubs franchise. It was our 141st season in the National League. And it was our 101st season at Wrigley Field. And funny enough, this Wrigley Field in Chicago is not the only Wrigley Field that has been used in the MLB. Any guess where the other Wrigley Field was?
I actually don't. I didn't know that.
The baseball savants listening will have to fact check me on this, but this is just off the dome. I'm going to go from this. But I believe it was in the 80s, and it was either the Oakland Athletics or the Los Angeles Angels, one of those California teams. They were getting a new stadium built, and they played in a minor league stadium in California called Wrigley Field.
That's crazy. I never knew that. And they would have been my last guesses.
Yeah, and you would think a lot of people, I mean, I don't feel like most people would know that that's the only, or there's another Wrigley Field out there.
No. I always thought that there was one.
Yep. And so history is something that we really want to highlight. So I want to make sure I highlight that stuff. So now that we've kind of set the stage for this season, this 2016 season, let's get into the regular season. And I'm going to highlight some things that were kind of big. Some things that I kind of left off in setting the stage, because they're things that probably the front office didn't think they'd play out like they would. But again, this is the thing about runs, that people just get in where they fit in and they do what they need to do, and everyone kind of has a role. And when you have a team that knows that, it's kind of magical, the run that they can go on when everyone just knows their role. So let's get into some of this stuff. So first off, in the regular season, you got to highlight the fact that this pitching staff was freaking nuts throughout the whole season. They led the MLB in ERA, 3.15. They had the lowest opponent batting average against them at 212. So basically every 10 batters they face, 2 of them are getting hits. Mm-hmm. And then they led the league in runs allowed. And then you go to the other side, and the offense just kind of bursted onto the seams really in a way that they haven't seen before, and from a lot of guys that they weren't expecting it to come from. You have Chris Bryant, who's a year 2 guy, young guy at third base, goes out, hits 292, hits 39 freaking dingers and 102 RBIs, and wins the NL MVP. I would be curious to see what the odds were of Chris Bryant to win the NL MVP going into that season. I bet you if anyone placed that bet, you won a lot of freaking money.
Yeah.
So then you go out and you trade for Anthony Rizzo, that young guy from the Padres. He comes in, freaking consistent first baseman for you. Also hits 292, hits 32 dingers and 109 RBIs. So again, you're getting offensive explosion from guys, young guys that you're not paying a ton of money, that you didn't have to like go out and sign in free agency. You pick them up in trades, you draft them, you develop them. It's young, cheap, controlled talent that's giving you an explosion of offense that this team probably wasn't expecting they were going to get. But hey, you'll take it where you can get it. And that's the thing that you're going to find. That's a common theme. Like people kind of they make their name for themselves during these type of seasons. And I think when it goes for Chris Bryant and Anthony Rizzo, I mean, these dudes bursted onto the scene that season.
Yeah, it was pretty out of nowhere.
Some other things I want to highlight as far as how good they were at calling guys up from AAA. So this season, you get Javier Baez gets called up from AAA on April 15th, makes his debut. He comes in as a rookie, bats 273, hits 14 bombs, 59 RBIs. That's freaking clutch if you think about this too, this is what's also crazy. I think he was like 20 or 21. And a 21-year-old that doesn't speak the best English is his second language, getting called up to the bigs and just like stepping in and filling a role like that and is like not phased. It's pretty freaking awesome.
Yeah.
And like, if you think about it from his perspective, like that's not letting the big stage get to you. And like, that's what everyone's looking for in a guy that when he gets called up, it's just like seamless for him. He knows he should be there. And then you call up Wilson Contreras a couple months later, who ends up being your everyday catcher. But also he gets called up and shows that he can play anywhere. They threw him in left field. I think he played some third base for him. But he comes up, plays amazing for you. Then they go out and they trade for guys too to add to their rotation, to add to the depth of the bullpen going into that playoff run. They go and they trade for Aroldis Chapman from the Yankees on July 25th. Cool thing about that trade, which I think people probably don't know, Gleyber Torres, second baseman now for the Yankees, was included in that deal. And he was like a top prospect in the organization, drafted by the Cubs, a highly touted prospect that they trade, a top prospect for an arm. That really Aroldis Chapman kind of came in and gave him 1.5 season of greatness. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's all you need. But cool, like Gleyber Torres goes on and becomes a staple for the Yankees. And it's just cool to see like guy gets traded when he's young in the minors, still makes it work out with the team that he goes to. So kind of going through that regular season, you highlight all these guys that come in the clutch batting. You get guys called up from AAA. You trade for guys. You have young talent that goes out and just freaking blows everyone away. You have Chris Bryant and Anthony Rizzo basically being the two leading NL MVP candidates, and Chris Bryant goes out and wins it. Oh, and then go to the other side, go back to the bump, and you had 3 guys that were Cy Young candidates, and Jake Arrieta, John Lester, and Kyle Hendricks. I'll just go through their starting rotation. Their starting 5 rotation. Listen to these stats for a season. This is freaking insane. Jake Arrieta, number 1 starter, went 18-8 with a 3.1 ERA. Kyle Hendricks went 16-8 with a 2.13 ERA. John Lester, 19-5 with a 2.44 ERA. John Lackey, 11-8 with a 3.35 ERA. And then you have Jason Hamill, 15-10 with a 3.83 ERA. That's just like dominating teams on the mound. And then you accompany that with the league leader in offense and on-base percentage. Like their on-base percentage for the Cubs was .343. Like that's freaking insane to be on base 35% of the time in baseball. For you true seam heads out there, like a Hall of Fame player bats 300 his whole life. And that's getting 3 out of 10 at-bats you're getting a hit. For a team to go basically get 35% on that is pretty insane. That means like everyone's doing their job when they come up to the plate. So with that being said, we kind of highlighted everything for the regular season. And so we'll kind of get into this playoff run. And one thing I think we're going to start doing with the Game Time Ballers podcast is, yes, we're here to talk about history. And if there's things that come up in the run to the World Series in the playoffs that are historic, I'll point it out. But sometimes you just want to get to the good stuff. Some of these podcast episodes, we're going to go through the postseason pretty thoroughly. Some of them, we might just skip past it and get to where the real magic happened. And honestly, this one's a really good example of it. They go into the playoffs, NLDS versus the Giants. The Giants, who have won like 3 of the last 5 freaking World Series and have like a really well veteran team, they go in and win that series 3-1. Then they go to the NLCS versus the Dodgers, team that had won like 105 games. Oh, it doesn't matter though. Or no, they won like 99 games because I forgot the Cubs had the best record in the MLB that year as well, 103-58. Kind of insane. Yeah, pretty much anytime you get over 100 wins, that's freaking nuts to me in the pros. They go into the Dodgers, win that series 3-2, I believe. Mm-hmm. Don't quote me on that.
I'm pretty
Get at me in the comments if I'm wrong. So they go on and they win the NLCS 3-2 versus the Dodgers, going to the first World Series in probably a while. I wonder when. I know they didn't win a World Series in 110 years, but I'm curious how many times they went to the World Series in that 110 years.
Actually, that's something I'd like to look up right now. Yeah, so been there 11 times. Won 3 times.
If you're a Cubs fan and you're reliving this whole thing, you're like, I don't really care about the playoff run. I just want to get to the World Series. Well, that's what we're going to do. We're just going to get to the World Series. You can bleep this out, Josh, but you were probably your freaking pants after Game 4 because you're down 3-1 at this point. Cool thing about history, gosh, I got to slow myself down sometimes. So 1, they played the Indians, the Cleveland Indians. Yeah. Now the Cleveland Guardians,
yep.
Which never mind, we're not going to comment on that. So they played the Cleveland Indians in the World Series. This was the first time that these teams had ever played in the playoffs. Pretty cool. This was the final World Series to have home field advantage decided by who won the All-Star game. So if you remember, back in the day, the All-Star game used to actually have some meaning. And this was the last year that they had this set up. So it used to be, 2016 was the last year, when AL and NL played in the All-Star game, the team that won, being NL or AL, got home field advantage in the World Series. So home field advantage meaning you start game 1 and 2 at home, and you get game 6 and 7 at home. This was the last year where that was decided by the All-Star game. So the AL won the All-Star game this year. So thus the Indians had home field advantage for the World Series. So kind of getting back into it, we talked about if you're a Cubs fan at this point, 4 games into this, you're kind of shitting bricks a little bit because you've waited all this time to get back to the World Series. You're here and you've gone down 3-1 really quickly. And I don't know what the stats are. Maybe Josh can find it out and pop it up on the screen. But I wonder how many teams have been down 3-1 in the World Series and have come back to win like the Cubs do. Because this next 3-game run that they go on, pretty much what I'm going to show you is a bunch of dudes just being dogs and coming up with big ABs at big times. And one, you're going to notice it's a lot of home runs because I think this team made the long ball play so much in this little 3-game run. And like, if you really think about it, like the game of baseball, you can score runs in a lot of different ways, but there is nothing that especially like sets a team, the home crowd, momentum, nothing changes a game more than a big home run at a big time. And like this next 3 games was just full of freaking home runs at the best time. So with that being said, we'll roll into our first couple. Our first one being Game 5, bottom of the 4th, Chris Bryant hitting his first big, long shot of it. I think this one went like 400 and something feet. One of these was just like a moonshot. The point is, the dude established Game 5 pretty much that he was not going to go down easy.
Trevor Bauer, the right-hander, fires. Fly ball, deep left center field, back toward the wall. It's got a chance. Gone!
Oh, that one barely snuck out.
Yeah. That's what you do with a fastball in the middle of the plate. You hit a line drive rocket over the 3.
Fastball in the middle of the plate. People should know, if you're a true seam head too, you never miss as a pitcher in the middle of the plate. You can miss anywhere if you're missing your spots, but you cannot miss over the heart of the plate.
No, that would just be a dinger.
Yes. Good major league guys that want to establish themselves as dogs in the moment are going to hit a freaking dong shot with that.
Oh, yeah.
The Cubs go on, win that game, so it's now 3-2. And then let's just roll right into the next game. We're in Game 6. You're still facing elimination at this point. You're back in Cleveland, so you're the road team in an elimination game in Game 6. And Chris Bryant says, boys, let me put the team on my back. I'm going to give you a nice dinger in the first inning to kind of start off the game for Game 6. So with that, we'll go to that one. Let's see how silenced this crowd gets. Oh,
that one was a bomb.
that is so cool. Go back to right as the pitch is coming and just hear how loud this crowd is. And then when he hits it, you can hear a pin drop.
Yep, just silences. Yeah.
That's nuts, dude. That's so cool. And that is a freaking... That's the one that was the moonshot.
Yeah, still quite a bit of blue in that crowd.
There is. Cubs fans have always traveled well, that's for sure. So, yeah, you start off Game 6 with that, and then as it goes on, you get into, what was it? The, bottom, or top 6. You get bases loaded. Addison Russell comes up. What inning was this in?
This one is in the top of the third.
Top of the third inning.
Game 6.
Okay, top of the third, Game 6. Still elimination game. You're up 3-0. You put some runs on the board this inning. You want to freaking basically just step on their throat this inning and put them out. And so Addison Russell comes up. I don't know how many big hits he had made yet throughout this series, but this one's probably the biggest hit of his career. And if you look at the trajectory, I'm sorry, Addison Russell, of your career, it pretty much went downhill after this.
At least
I'm not even going to get into the specifics of it, but if you know Addison Russell is a true Cubs fan and you know all of the things that happened after 2016 with this dude, this is pretty much the start of his fall from grace. But he has this freaking iconic moment to live on, at least. 2-0. Takes it was a slider, not in a bad spot, but again, you'll see a lot of these pitches, when you hit them out, you can't miss middle, and I mean that's middle in. I mean that's middle, damn near.
Yeah.
Jeez. Grand slam, puts you up 7-0, top 3. You're pretty much stepping on their throat and saying, we're going Game 7, boys. So with that being said, we'll roll into Rizzo, just kind of topping it off in this Game 6, really kind of keeping the momentum going into Game 7 with what he does in this top 9 with this home run that he hits. Freaking moonshot.
Wow.
Dude, it's always the middle of the plate. That's a good pitch. That's out of the zone. Out of the zone below his knees. But if you miss middle, anywhere in the middle, you're going to get rocked. Cubs take Game 6 to force a Game 7. You come into Game 7, and Game 6, you lead it off with a home run. So Dexter Fowler says, dogs, I want in on the action. Let me start off this game, Game 7, with a dinger as well.
There's a nervous energy in this park.
Corey Kluber.
2-1. That's in the air to center.
Man, taking on the deepest part of the ballpark.
He's gone. What a start. Dexter Fowler.
What a start.
Game 7.
Can't say it any better than Joe Luck.
See, these are the moments I remember.
There is a lot of blue in those stands. That's crazy for that being in Cleveland. So, yeah, of course, Dexter Fowler leads off the Game 7 with that. And then, do we have Wilson Contreras pulled up? Wilson Contreras kind of been a little slow during the playoffs. Hadn't done much. Again, he's a rookie at this time, playing catcher, filling in at left field, playing all around. And he comes up with this clutch RBI double in the top of the fourth. Put Cubs up 3-1, I think at this point, makes it 3-1. Ooh. Jeez, it almost goes out.
Almost.
It's 3-1.
See, as a Cardinals fan, I kind of like watching this stuff too for young Wilson Contreras because now he's Cardinals catcher. You've got a 3-1 lead. As the Cubs, you're just thinking again, step on their throat and let's just keep adding to this as much as we can. And so Javi Baez, holy crap, I butchered your name. Javi Baez comes in, also a rookie, 5th inning, home run, game 7, roll that.
If Lester comes in, so does Ross, and I think Lester, here's a fly ball into right center.
Ooh.
Back at the wall off the bat of Baez. 4-1.
Hang me. You hang it, I bang it. I'm pretty sure that was a hanging slider. Run that back. I kind of want to see what pitch that was.
Yeah, he knocked that one out.
If Lester comes in, so does Ross, and I think Lester, here's a fly ball into right center. Back at the wall off the bat of Baez.
Slider changeup, something like that. Still, the saying stands. You hang it, we bang it. So Lester comes in, got a 5-1 lead. This is bottom 5, so he pitched 3 innings for him. So I guess 5, 6, 7, I believe. So he comes in. David Ross makes this error. 39-year-old catcher says he's going to retire at the end of the season. Last run with the Cubs. Can he win himself a World Series title? Needs to make a big play for the boys, and he makes this play.
Lester deals, and this is Ross. Has to hurry.
Dude, at that point with 2 outs, you probably just eat that ball.
Yeah.
I don't even know why you throw that. Runner's going to score, right? No, he stops at second and third.
Stops at third and second, yeah.
For Cleveland as Ross threw it away. Well, any other pitcher but Lester, he's not going to get off the mound, and he's not going to go get this. The distance that Ross has to go get this.
Well, and so I believe what happens after that is they score a couple of runs, but then David Ross makes up for it, top 6, goes to the next inning, and he hits a dawn shot in his last official at-bat of his career at 39 years old, making him the oldest player in World Series history to hit a home run. History, folks. History savants. We got it all here at the Game Time Ballers podcast. So let's roll David Ross, making it up to the boys, saying, guys, I got you. Let me get it back. It's 5-3. 2 runs on me. Let me get one of these runs back with a solo shot.
Yep. Get that momentum back.
Through just 63 pitches. Ross flies one into center. Sends Davis
Middle.
back at the wall.
Where is that pitch? Middle of the plate.
Yep.
All these home runs are, if you miss middle, dudes are going to hit it out.
David Ross.
Gosh, if you're the Cleveland pitching coach, you got to be like, guys, come on. Okay, so as the Cubs, really this is just the story of your season and your franchise. You think you have this game in the bag. You're up 6-3. Cleveland comes back and ties it up in the bottom of the ninth, takes you into extra innings. In extra innings, your World Series MVP, Ben Zobrist, comes up with this to put the Cubs up 7-6 in the top of the 10th.
Zobrist stands a base hit. Cubs will take the lead. Almora dig into the plate. Zobrist delivers 7-6 in the 10th.
Huge hit.
Massive.
So you can pause right there. Funny story about Ben Zobrist. I realized I almost went this whole podcast without saying that. You can just leave a pause on his face right there if you want.
Yeah.
So, Ben Zobrist, I met you on your MLB debut in St. Louis when you were playing for the Tampa Bay Rays. My good childhood friend, Levi Stevens, shout out if the Stevens family ever watched this, is your cousin, I believe. Cousin in some form or fashion. So, when you made your MLB debut for the Rays, playing second base, I believe, at Busch Stadium, I was there. And you hit a double off the wall, and you hit a single. So you went 2 for 4 in your MLB debut, and I got to meet you afterwards and shake your hand, and I think I took a picture with you. So, yeah, Ben Zobrist, if you ever watch this, hi, you met me. And Stevens family, if you ever watch this, haven't talked to you guys in years, hi, I do this. Look, I'm talking about when I met Ben Zobrist. With that being said, we'll roll into what gives the Cubs another little bit of a lead because they're going to need it because I believe Cleveland comes back and scores some runs here before they get the final out. But Cubs are up 7-6, got bases loaded. Miguel Montero comes up, gets another run on the board. A big insurance run.
Off the rest of this 10th. That's a base hit. Rizzo scores.
Dude, that Cubs crowd there is crazy. To hear that much,
Massive.
that's crazy.
Really important to the city of Chicago. No one's going
I
to
mean, that's wild. I wonder how far Cleveland is from Chicago.
Not crazy far. We are looking at about 5 hours and 12 minutes.
That's nothing.
That is nothing.
That is nothing.
No.
So, kudos to you Cubs fans out there. You traveled well. And I mean, I get why. Game 7, got a chance to see something that hasn't been done in 110 freaking years.
Yeah.
I'd probably be there too. How about we roll into the final out? Because I'm pretty sure the Indians scored a few. I don't know. It got interesting. They did score 1. Okay, so it's 8-7. Let's just roll into this final out.
Here's the 0-1. This is going to be a tough play. The Cubs win the World Series.
Dang, that is a tough play.
Yep.
It's over. And the Cubs have finally won it all. 8-7.
Finally won it all.
Finally.
What are you thinking as you watch this as a Cubs fan?
I actually remember the exact moment I saw this. My entire family was separated except for me and my mom. Everybody was gone for some odd reason, and I was sitting in my living room. Of course, we're screaming, and all the guys end up calling me, and we did a lot of dangerous things that night, hanging out of car windows, and it was
Oh my gosh!
it was,
I bet you it was a party.
Yeah. The weather was no good, so it was pretty easy to drift the car, and it was crazy. We no one went to school for I believe 2 days.
Did you go to the World Series parade?
Yeah. I ended up going. That's why there was no school. I mean, it went on for
That's awesome.
for more than a day, and I don't know if you can see it here. Anthony, when Rizzo is catching that ball, it's hard to see from that angle. I was saying this earlier, but it was really cool to see after we get a really good look at it, just the smile slowly appear on his face, and he's not even
As
looking
he
at that
catches
ball.
it?
He's not even looking
That's
at
awesome.
that ball. I mean,
Well, they made that play hundreds of times.
yeah, these guys do this.
That's
every day.
why you practice it, and that's why like every kid ever, even every listener ever, I don't care how old you are, when you were a kid and you were throwing the ball outside, for me, I always threw a lacrosse ball. That got the best bounce.
Yeah.
Lacrosse ball up against the wall, the brick in the front of my parents' house growing up, and literally, I always put myself like in that moment. Game 7 of the World Series, ball hits you, gotta make the play. Boom. Like every kid lives that in their front yard.
I mean, it's muscle memory, but even as a Cubs fan, even looking back at it, knowing that we won, I see that, and I'm still like, Rizzo, please just look at the ball. Just please look at it, man. Like, knowing our track record, that still just makes me nervous.
And so just to talk about history, think Cubs win their second World Series, first one in 110 years. And if you really think about this, there's a lot of cool history of that team. Joe Madden, I believe that was the last time he won a World Series as a manager, and he was just one of the all-time greats, did it for a lot of different teams. So kudos to him. You get David Ross that gets to go out and retire at 39 years old, who now manages the club and goes out last year playing with a World Series, and then gets to take that momentum into being the manager one day. I mean, that history is cool in and of itself. And really, you had the rise to stardom of Chris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo, Wilson Contreras, and Javier Baez. Now, say what you want. A lot of their career trajectories after that were kind of up and down, and some are down.
For sure.
For some of those guys, it's way down right now. But there's a lot of names, household names that were established because of that run. Guys like Anthony Rizzo, freaking Wilson Contreras, Javier Baez, Chris Bryant, they're going to be guys that everyone always knows about because of that. Because in this game, no matter how long your career is, if you can do something great for one season, you'll always be remembered for that.
Especially
And that's
the Cubs.
Exactly. And that's what's cool about it. I bet you all those guys can come back to Chicago and they're like freaking celebrities still, no matter if it ended bad when they left.
I remember going to a Cubs game actually not too long ago, and I still saw their faces.
Yeah.
On signs and posters.
Yeah.
And stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, they're like immortal in that city now.
Yeah. And so that is going to kind of wrap up the episode. Our last segment that we want to do here at the Game Time Ballers podcast, we want to talk about the ballers of the series. We're going to talk about the dogs of the series, our Dogs of October segment. And so one thing we always want to do is we want to highlight a bat off the bench. We want to highlight an everyday player, and we want to highlight a pitcher. So here we go. I'm going to highlight first our everyday bat, Chris Bryant. Dude was a dog. I know Ben Zobrist won the MVP, but that man doing what he did in basically his rookie season, winning the NL MVP, putting up numbers that he did, hitting clutch home runs when he did. I mean, the dude is a dog. Through and through, a dog through that run. And then if you go to a bench bat, this one, for you seam heads, you should like this. Kyle Schwarber, who was hurt because he tore his ACL like I think it was like 15 games in the season. Tore his ACL. I believe it was in Miami colliding with another outfielder, but he tore his ACL. He comes back, has been out all season, comes back for the World Series, pretty much only plays in the World Series, and he comes up with multiple clutch hits, not necessarily to score runs, but to keep innings alive and to get guys on base, move guys over. And for a guy that's essentially a rookie to come back from tearing his ACL and do that for the boys and just be a dog, I think that's a dog that you need to highlight. And then our dog for the pitching staff, for me, this is kind of going to be up in the air because there could be a lot of people that you could bring up to this. But for me, it's going to be John Lester, because if you just put together that whole season and through October, he was called on in the biggest moments. Sometimes he didn't always deliver, but if you're the arm that's called on in the big moments, you're a dog. And guys, like, he established a really great career of just being a dog. And that's everyone that's ever had John Lester play for your team. You knew the dog that you were getting with him. So for me, he's going to be my pitching dog of October. So with that being said, that's going to kind of wrap up our podcast episode here at the Game Time Ballers podcast for the 2016 Chicago Cubs. Again, I want to go back and thank our sponsor, the Game Time Bats. Make sure you go down to the link in the bio, hit that, go to the website. If you're a Cubs fan and you don't have this 2016 World Series Championship souvenir bat in your trophy case, then I don't know what you're doing, because you guys don't have that many to celebrate. So you should probably have this one of all of them.
Yeah,
and make sure you hit that link, go cop one, put it in your man cave, put it in the office. If you're a big Zoom guy, do a lot of Zoom meetings, put it in the background so you have it in your little Zoom display like me. If you're thinking about reliving history, this is a way to do it. So make sure you're doing that. We want to thank Game Time Bats for sponsoring this episode. And Josh, any final words you got for the people before we wrap this whole thing up?
Definitely one of the more iconic World Series I think that we've ever really had. It was super important to this entire city. I mean, the city that I'm from. You know, it's going to be hard to beat a team like that. I mean, it was such a memorable team. I mean, so many like characters. I mean, they didn't even seem human, you know. But it was a nerve-wracking season, and now I can sleep at night.
And as long as it doesn't take another 110 years, then you're good.
I don't know if they can promise that, though. It's still the Cubs.
Yeah. We'll see. It is still the Cubs, but hey, if you're a Cubs fan, we know there's a lot of them out there. Again, make sure you go cop yourself a souvenir bat for the Cubs. Make sure you're liking, subscribing, sharing our stuff. Comment below. If I missed stuff, tell me. If I didn't talk about things, tell me. Let Josh know. Yeah, that's it for the Game Time Ballers podcast about the 2016 Cubs. Make sure you stick around for the next episode. Who knows what team we'll be talking about? You never know. We'll see.